Hello and welcome to the Mountain Biking Podcast. This is your host, Brooks Lawson, aka the Mountain Biking Realtor, and you can find all things Brooks at brookslawson.com. Today is April 1st. It's April Fool's Day. How many times did you guys got today?
0 so far.
My kids got me twice this morning. They said the dogs had an accident in the house, maybe search around the house for it, and they got me at the end and said, "No, you're faking it." 7-year-olds.
So we're gonna do a quick guest intro. This is gonna be the SATN podcast. We're gonna talk about the South Austin Trail Network. And here we have, if you know anything about South Austin Trail work, you know these people already, but I'm gonna go ahead and let them introduce themselves. We'll start with you over here.
My name is Greg Klipp. I lead the Group 1 on the Tuesday Crank and Drink rides. I've been riding the SATN Trail Network for, probably 10 years at this point.
I am Carl Zapfe.
There goes my camera.
I'm such a
Nailed it. Thanks, Greg.
I got you.
dynamic. I'm a dynamic speaker. I knock over phones.
Good job. So I want to just get straight to it, get to the brass tacks.
What about Dale?
Oh, Dale. Yeah, I'll edit that out. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Dale.
Dale, go ahead. Sorry.
He's just Dale, guys.
Yeah,
that's
I'm just
that's
Dale.
all it is.
Just Dale. Okay. Well, we're gonna have a follow up.
Just
we're gonna have a follow up episode with Dale. He's gonna talk a lot more, but he's part of the SATN crew, so he's just here with us to talk about SATN. We're gonna talk about some other things later. So let's get straight to the brass tacks. Greg, why is your profile picture on Strava a parrot?
At this point, it's a legacy image from the original graffiti that was underneath Mopac Bridge. I took a photo of it, and then a few weeks after I took that photo, it got covered up, and I was like, well, that's going to be the perfect image to represent me in Strava, and anyone that's been around the trails long enough knows that particular image from underneath Mopac there.
Do you know the artist?
I do not. I have no idea.
Drib on social media, Instagram.
Okay,
So
all right.
Give him a shout out there.
Drib? How do you spell that?
DRIB. Yeah,
Drib,
or
okay.
excuse me, his street name is Drib. His Instagram name is That Bird.
Is he responsible for a lot of the octopuses as well?
No, actually, the octopus is his buddy as well.
Okay.
That's Taco.
Okay.
So you can find him Taco, or no, he's the main fish on Instagram. So yeah, our satin street artists.
Street artist or underbridge artist or whatever.
I think it's one of the joys of the trail network is the artwork throughout the entire system and finding all those little tidbits that are left behind. And someone posts a particular image and I try to seek it out on my ride the next time I'm out.
Yeah, there's a lot of it too. So do you want to do kind of a longer introduction like Greg? Tell us how you got into mountain biking, how you started mountain biking in South Austin, like how old were you? Did you start with other cutting biking or?
I believe it or not, despite my lack of any technical skills right now, I used to work at a shop up in Chicago. Late 90s, started in 1998 all the way through 2006, a shop called Deerfield Cyclery. I worked there. There wasn't much of a cross-country scene, but it was more of a urban free ride. So I had a nice little hardtail, was doing, drops off of loading docks, going downstairs. And back then, it was hard pressed to find people wearing a helmet. So I think about the stuff that I used to do as a kid. I'm like, I would not have allowed myself to do that if I had tried it nowadays. But I took a break from mountain biking in the mid 2000s, late 2000s. Came down to Austin when I met my lovely wife. We were up in Rhode Island. Moved here in 2009. And when I got here, I had my bike shipped down from Chicago. And at that point, it was a 1999 S-Works hardtail with the linear pull brakes. I had 100 millimeters of front travel on it, which, back in 1999, I was like, that was like a free ride bike. And I started to ride the Barton Creek Greenbelt around here. This before I knew about SATN and broke the frame within the third ride. And just realized I was underbiked for what Austin had in store. So I got a new hardtail, a giant ecstasy, ATX bikes was the ones that introduced me to that bike. And that's when they started pointing out the trail network behind the shop there, started riding it. It was before Strava, so I just kind of explored, and every time I'd go out on the bike, I'd go a little bit further on the trail and notice a cut through and explore that the next ride. But then the trails were really just what was behind ATX bikes, behind the Veloway there. Then a buddy of mine introduced me to Strava. I know it's a lot of people dork on this stuff, but Strava is what allowed me to find the trails that were beyond the main network. And doing the flyby feature, I could see where other riders were riding, and I try to locate those trails the next time I was out. And for years I just rode by myself. I was not a group rider. I didn't know any other people that rode. So just solo out there on Strava, trying to follow that stuff, putting up top times for myself and just trying to compete against myself. And that's where I met Carl. I started, messaging you on Strava about, trail maintenance that you were doing and new trails that were being discovered, and, kind of exploring that and, doing trail, reports. And after a few years of that, a buddy of mine, said, hey, there's a bunch of guys behind ATX bikes on Tuesdays, doing these group rides. Would you come out? I was like, I'm not really going to do that. But then there was a visitor from out of town that came in, no one that I knew, but he did the Strava flyby. The same way I was discovering trails, he discovered me on one of the flybys, and he messaged me on Strava and says, hey, I'm from the East Coast. I see you do a bunch of trails around here. Would you, take me out and show me, what SATN has to offer? And, I did a few rides with him. It was the first time I've ever ridden with another person here in Austin. And then he had to get going because, hey, I want to ride Tuesday before I have to leave. Are you available? And I was like, no, I got to work. But I was like, I've never ridden with these guys, but I know they meet up behind the shop at Tuesdays at 6:00. And so he went to the Crank and Drink ride by himself, and messaged me that night and said, if you haven't been out to that group ride, you are missing out. Those are a bunch of crazy mofos. The group, the attitude is positive. The competition is strong. I was like, all right, fine. So the next week I went out with him, did the first Crank and Drink ride. And Carl, I met you face to face for the first time after, messaging on Strava.
Oh, so you're Greg Clip. Huh?
Yeah. Well, you put me in charge of leading a group the very first time I was out there.
Sounds about right.
I think you had me sweep.
Imagine that.
I think you had me sweep group one, and you talked me up, and I was so nervous because I hadn't I'd never done a group ride.
Yeah, but I'd known your speeds and stuff. I could see what you were capable of, so I knew where you fit, kind of,
Yeah.
Strava's good for, a lot of things.
You were a legend.
Yeah.
A lot of people knew me before I knew them,
Yeah,
showing
exactly.
up then. But I ended up sweeping group one. And I think I had maybe just 2 or 3 people that tagged along with me. I think Chris Feltz was probably one of them. And everyone gave me positive feedback. And then I think whoever was leading that group one the next week, they didn't show up. And I ended up leading it. And it whooped my butt. But it was a push that I was unable to do, myself. And it was a type of an exertion that, you got people breathing down, your neck, and you're constantly aware of the riders behind you, and you keep trying to go faster and faster and faster. And it just became addicting at that point. And now I'm obsessed with not only leading groups, but, working with you guys on, route ideas and things that will not only allow, newer riders to participate, the shorter routes, but having longer variations of those short routes on the same ride. So the more competitive riders can also do the same, the same route plan, but also extend it at the end of it and get everyone back to the shop at the same time for, a social gathering and hanging out and, talking about the war stories of, who did what during the ride and, poking fun at each other and, and whatnot.
Showing scars.
Yeah. So, I think that was It's a little bit of a tangent, Brooks. I'm sorry to.
That's okay.
I think that's what you wanted, though.
Yeah. Well, I got another quick tangent. Let's just settle this right here and now. Is it SATN or Satan?
Don't get me started.
It's Satan, but I love it when people think of they look at it just quickly and then see Satan, and it's like, well, it's kind of an aggressive, hardcore
Pronunciation is in the mind of the reader or sayer, so why are you saying Satan when you're looking at the definition of the smooth cloth in the dictionary is SATN. That is satin. That's how the dictionary pronounces satin.
Well, nobody who has ridden satin would say it's smooth.
That is true. Yep.
When we were talking about Smooth Crew, I thought, I missed a great opportunity. Instead of calling it Smooth Crew, call it the Satin Angels, the Satin Trail Angels. And then that really confused people. The Satan Trail Angels.
You give off the wrong impression.
Satin. That was one of the reasons for the Satin Social, just to be able to get satin out there in the media land, so everyone would say, okay, satin. That's how you say it, satin.
Well, there you go. It's on the record now.
I've since yielded, and I agree, satin. But yeah, in the beginning, it was Satan.
I'm curious, where did you first see that that phrase used, satin? For the South Austin Trail Network, was it? Did you start that, or was that just
coin the phrase, Carl?
There was a bulletin board called Bike Mojo, which is now gone. It was taken over by Korean bots or something, and it was a great thing. And so a long while ago, since I wanted to discuss this system or network of trails in South Austin, what are we going to call it? So I started a thread that said, and I thought of the acronyms and everything before I started the thread. I go, we're going to talk about the South Austin Trail Network. And the rest is history.
Well, that's a good segue, Carl, because you're known as sort of the godfather of satin. So tell us about yourself. Tell about your history with satin, your history in Austin, how long you've been here, how long you've been riding, all that fun stuff.
Oh, well, it started in 1973 when a bunch of my friends, we took a road trip on bikes from Norman, Oklahoma to Sulphur, Oklahoma to this guy's ranch. And that was a big thing. It was on the front page of the Norman Transcript. And so it was a deal. So I've been a roadie for a long time. And when I graduated high school, I went with a friend to Europe, and we stayed over there for 2.5 months riding around and put on about 2,000 miles seeing Europe on a bike. And when I came to Austin in 1983 to open my restaurant, I was still a roadie, and I rode, and I'd ride down Mopac and, crazy, stupid places on 360. And then on the news, about the third time, a guy got killed on 360 doing what he was supposed to. It wasn't a, hey, look at me situation. He was just on, doing what they were supposed to be doing, and then distracted driver killing him. I go, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to be a roadie. It just scared me, and I knew I'd seen some trails and I'd seen some guys on bikes. And so I bought a Trek Rigid, a 26-inch course, and started hitting the trails. And soon, of course, I saw these trails, and I go, why does that trail not connect to that trail? And the rest of that is history, of course. So, yeah, so that was a long time ago.
Was that the Greenbelt, or was there actually?
No, even to this day, I don't appreciate the Greenbelt that much, because I tell people I like to ride my bike, not carry my bike. And and in the Greenbelt, I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how. Well, I'm not going to say that, because some of our group is crazy and good, but a lot of people walk a lot in the Greenbelt to get from here to there, So it's never been my favorite, but yeah, no, just all around the house and stuff. I've lived in the same house now for 30 years. So, and that's another great thing about Satin, that everyone's house is 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks, whatever, from a trailhead,
Sure.
to get onto the Satin. And it's amazing how many of us are this close to the thing. So yeah, so that's my deal.
Well, Dale, do you want to go next? What's your history? I know how long you've been in Austin, how long you've been mountain biking, how'd you get into it?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I was born and raised in Austin. Been here all my life, and I think I got into mountain bike riding when I worked at United Heritage Credit Union, right there at the corner of Slaughter and Mopac. It's right next to the Walgreens there, and the owner of ATX Bikes, different owner at the time,
Across the street, when it was across the street.
Yeah,
from,
where the Birds Barbershop is now, and so this was circa 2010, and so the owner from ATX would come across the street to deposit business checks, and he would be on his bike, and I'd sometimes see him ride in from behind the credit union on his bike too, and I was probably close to 195 pounds at this point. Like, it was the heaviest I ever was in my life after being a scrawny guy pretty much all my life. Yeah. I do have pictures, to prove.
I don't believe you.
To prove, right. Yeah. But I just figured I need to start doing something physical, and I hate running with a passion. And, so I saw him on this bike, and I thought, well, that looks fun, and so I started looking into mountain bikes, and I bought a Trek 3700 with disc brakes from Bicycle Sports Shop at the time. It was still open. And
way to support the local guy there across the street.
Hell yeah. And, oh, right. Yeah, no kidding. Hey, I did buy some accessories from him, but yeah, I wound up buying the Trek from Bicycle Sports Shop, and I spent about probably a year riding, I think, mostly Walnut Creek. Some buddies took me up there and showed me Walnut Creek, and it was pretty much all for fitness. And then I kind of fell out of it. And then fast forward to 2019 and the pandemic, 2020, I guess, pandemic starts up, and they send us all home. So we're working from home, and I'm kind of going stir crazy. I enjoy working from home, but I'm going stir crazy. So I start running, right? Trying to do something physical, even though I hate it. And I quickly remember after like 3 days of running that I hate running. And I'm laying on the floor of my bedroom, like passed out, dying, trying to catch my breath, wondering, what am I doing? And I'm looking up, and my bike's hanging from the ceiling. I'm like, shit, that's right, I have a bike. And so I just kind of looked into what I needed to do to get it fixed up and started riding again. And so I headed out to Circle C Metro Park. I remember some of the trails out there. And for the first time, I thought, well, I'm going to go underneath the bridge here under Mopac, because I saw a bridge and I saw the trail. I was like, well, I never crossed over. Let's see if there's some more trail. And that's kind of when I started realizing, wow. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff, and got on Trail Forks and Strava and started trying to figure out where everything goes. And then realized like Trail Forks was all misnamed and misrouted, and everything was weird. And so I started changing names on there, and I referred to, I think, the Onion Park Trail, right, as Three Kings. And the first time I met Carl was Carl posting something about like, why is this trail called this or something like that? That's not what it's called this. And so that kind of started my relationship with Carl and cleaning up South Austin Trail Network on Trail Forks and all that. So I guess
you've done an excellent job. It's perfect. Trail Forks is perfect.
Even to this day, though, believe it or not, I mean, we have 140 miles of trail. I don't know how many like individual trails there are, but there's a lot. And so even like yesterday, we had somebody pointing out that one of them was mislabeled, and so we're fixing it even to this day, and we'll probably continue for a while. But so that was my first kind of experience with South Austin Trail Network. And then the second was when we went to Bentonville with Brooks in 2020. And I experienced that for the first time. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then came back to SATN, and I was like, oh, we need features. And
I've heard this story so many times. Like, I went to Bentonville, and I came back, and I was like, we need this here now.
It's broken record story. But yeah, that's eventually what happened is just, you see other people and what they have, and you start navel gazing. You're like, wow, that's really nice. And so I just wanted something like that in South Austin. And so talked to Carl, kind of figured out a spot where we could start doing some digging. And lo and behold, now we have tunnel vision and East Bank stuff and all of that. But shout out also, as long as I'm on that point, I'm not the first person to dig out there. That was Alex Weir and Andre Kashkin. And so they're kind of the guys who got that whole spot going with the natural drop, that step up, a couple of little doubles along the fence line. And then I came in, added the berms, the step down, and the 3 tabletops, and had a lot of help along the way. But yeah.
How did everyone find that spot?
Well, I guess exploring mostly.
What trail were they on while they found
East
that?
Bank. So East Bank.
Where did that come from?
Well, yeah.
You want to tell the story, Carl?
I think Carl's trying to say something here. But yeah, that segues into like maybe one of the best trails we have in South Austin Trail Network, East Bank.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, tell us the history about that actually, because I'm kind of curious.
Well, I discovered that trail after the school bought the piece of property where the peacocks are, where you hear the peacocks are. So what's now the school over there used to be a farm. And so that side of the creek, the north side of Slaughter Creek there, was owned by someone, and you shouldn't discover trails on Farmer Jones's property. I say all the time, I go, that's just too invasive and you're asking for trouble, just don't do that. That's wrong. And so, but then as soon as the school took ownership of that, East Bank, which is the east side of Slaughter Creek Bank. So East Bank.
Top 3 favorite trails, Dale.
Ooh.
For what?
On SATN.
For what though? For what purpose? Because people
Whatever
on
your favorite purpose is.
People on Facebook all the time. Hey, I want to ride trails, and what's a good trail? And then
I mean, your personal favorite.
Oh, okay.
So let's see. Top 3. I would have to say, well, Chip Chop would have been one. That's rest in peace. So rest in peace, Chip Chop. I would have to say, I think North Bank is very flowy. Bunny Gravel has a lot of potential. And then East Bank.
What about you, Carl? What are your favorite? Too many? It's like choosing your favorite band.
Well, I'm East Bank is very scenic and very different from a lot of even Austin stuff, and so it's different from a lot of the SATN. So I like it a whole lot. There's too many. When I'm out riding, a lot of times I go, "This is a good trail." A lot of times.
Carl's gonna pass.
Yeah, I got to pass.
Greg.
Oh, I preach this trail, and I know it's a controversial subject for some, but Disco behind Metro. I love that trail to death. I remember the first time I did it without dabbing, and it was just a personal accomplishment. And I feel like for any rider out there that has trouble with it, once you get through without dabbing once, you've kind of figured it out.
It does feel good.
And you can do it every time after that. But it's a challenging trail. It's a skill check trail. It's got, some techie rock gardens. There's flow in there if you get the speed up. A lot of people don't see the flow, but, a lot of those features are really easy if you get the speed up. Disco, a newer trail right now. A lot of people like Meridian Highline, or, as Carl likes to call it, pineapple upside down cake.
I do not like that name. He's teasing me a lot because that's a stupid name, and people come up with stupid names, and people that don't have anything to do with the trail come up with the names, and that's totally wrong. And that guy in there worked hard on that, and we communicated with him. What would you like to call it? And
whoever named it that, shame on you.
Meridian Highline, though, for anyone that's been out there to check it out, it runs parallel to the Bear Lake Jeep track out in Meridian, connecting to Avania. And one of my reasons I like it is not only is it a challenging trail, but it serves a purpose, and it provides an alternative way of coming and going out of Meridian there. Before you're kind of just stuck with the Jeep track. And, as Carl, knows when we plan the routes, that the last thing you want to do is double back on a segment that you've already taken to go out there.
repeat trail?
Yes.
What?
We don't want to repeat trail, and, we don't want to cause too much issue with the golf course out there. So I prefer anything that would keep us away from that. So Highline, Disco, and I mean, Dale, I would agree. Did you say North Bank?
Yeah, I think North Bank as well. Yeah.
North Bank is like the OG trail.
Yeah.
And my wife calls it, we called it the fun trail for a long time. That's the fun trail.
Yeah.
Because she liked it, but we like it too. That's
Well, it's nice because it's got the G outs that you can dip in and out of if you want to add a little spice to it. But it's a fast trail. It's got great flow, and it's open to all riders. You know, my wife rides it with me. She can do that trail. My kids can do it. I mean, they have a little challenge with, you know, some of that rocky part. Yeah. But you know, that's one of the OG trails, and you know, no matter what happens, that'll be one of my top trails out here.
It's amazing how different it is from, like, you know, you got Aesthetic, you got Javier's, you got South Bank, Dixie,
right there.
Yeah, every single one of those trails, very, very rocky. And then you have North Bank, just this perfect, pristine, smooth flow trail with one little rock garden.
I don't know how it stayed that way.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the trails just from erosion and just from use. I mean, North Bank is one of the highest used trails around here. And, you know, look at Maxwell Slaughter Creek. You know, 5-6 years ago, it was fast, flat, and flowy.
Hill of Life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Right. Let's talk about erosion.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you look at those trails now and, you know, they're still great trails. I love them, but they're completely different from where they used to be. And I feel like North Bank is just kind of that trail that never changes.
I get a lot of pleasure out of looking how trails mature from inception and 10, 15 years later. And I think that it's like bottomland, like bottom farmland, that it just keeps depositing dirt on it as opposed to
That's exactly it, man.
washing it away. Yeah, we're lucky to. Yeah, you think you're in the Great Northwest Forest or something when you're going through there because it's dirt. You know, what's this? What's this underneath our tire? Can we segue from here? Greg
We
said
can talk
something.
about whatever you want, Carl.
Oh, great. Because Greg said something that was important about trail sanitizing and altering trail, because you had great joy from conquering Disco.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone had removed a bunch of rocks or something,
And they have.
well, yeah, but that trail wasn't meant to be. I sanitize trails a lot. I'll go out with a hammer because that trail was not designed, not necessarily that one, but trails were not designed to have annoying rocks. And it's a balance. I'll say that it's a balance that, you know, something that'll just tear your tire. There's no skill in, hey, look, my tire didn't rip on that jagged rock that has now come up from the tread going down that much, you know.
Yeah, can I piggyback on that,
Yeah,
actually?
uh-huh.
You know, there's another example, and this actually gets brought up a lot, and so I kind of want to address it because it's a bugbear of mine. And regarding like Walnut Creek, for example, is a good case. BMX loop, you know, from time to time, we'll throw dirt on roots or something like that, or cover up something that's getting eroded, and somebody will complain that like we covered up their favorite route, and the name's in the trail, right? So it's BMX loop, and it's intended to be a smooth, flowy trail, and that's the way it was intended to be. And so
Right.
when trails start getting eroded, and somebody goes and puts more dirt on there, they're not sanitizing it; they're restoring it.
Right.
So, yeah,
Exactly.
He who builds the trail decides the way it's supposed to be.
correct.
Well, no, I'll even. There's an argument against that, because after a while, like, okay, that's not designed. That's not how the original trail builder might have designed it, but it's become such a iconic thing that you don't change it. You know, so and yes, of course I agree with that sentiment of that the trail builder, whoever that is, should have pretty good say about what it is to be. But yeah, after a while, the public domain becomes a more trumping cause, you know.
Yeah,
So,
once it becomes the community
Yeah.
thing and not so
Yeah.
much your own thing.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know if it's, you know, some of the stuff that gets me though, it's not so much sanitizing. I understand like the need to, you know, knock down some rocks, but you know, on some trails where someone does a cheater path or something around a techie feature where the feature itself is part of that trail. And then once that cheater path gets cut, it just naturally starts being broken in, and then it becomes a mainstay of that trail. And that's hard for me sometimes, just because I want to see people try to challenge themselves and do the original lines, but you know, sometimes those original lines disappear, and they just become this new cut through that people, you know, had put in there. And I know there's a few spots on Disco, not so much before, but there used to be that really techie. It was the rock garden right at the far west part of it. And used to have to barrel straight up through the rock garden, and it, used to challenge a lot of people. And then something like a cheater line broke in on the right hand side, so you can always hug the far right side of that line. And every once in a while I'm riding out there, I'm like, I want to throw some sticks down or something and try to discourage people from taking that new line that's forming and try to get them back on the OG line. But there's also the part where that's just kind of the natural evolution of the trail. And as things erode and become, too difficult, I guess I got to just refrain from having that reaction and just allow that to naturally just kind of evolve.
My philosophy on that is there's only so much land out there. Just like a golf course. I use a golf course as a example. At a golf course, they have 4 different sets of tees because they know that there's only so much land that they can build this golf course on, but they want to accommodate a wide range of skill levels. And so I am adamantly opposed to altering a feature, but I'm okay with an alternate line. I mean like a whole separate line. Like you were defending the thing on Disco, and I just discovered a alternate line on that one rocky thing that was not that rocky when it was built. I'm pretty sure. So the alternate line is slower, and it's not going to enable a Strava KOM guy, that's trying to. So that's not a concern, but it's safer and doable. And I even, like when you said, oh, you're telling me, oh, Carl, all you have to do is go up this line. I go, oh, I did it that night before, when we on Crank and Drank, when we did that. Yeah, you just power through it, and it's really easy. But sometimes I don't want to do it. Sometimes I go, sometimes it's at the end of the ride and I'm tired and I don't want to put myself at risk. And so alternate line to me is a fine thing, and IMBA says the same thing. They're okay with alternate lines, because they know there's more than, not everybody. Our perception of mountain biking skills are very skewed because our group, a lot of them are pretty skilled. There's state champions on, so. But then there's those new people that say, oh, well, this is not fun because they took us all over this stuff, and so, I build it for you, and I build it for, these jumper guys, and, but I also have to accommodate my wife, who is not the strongest rider, but she enjoys getting out there, so, and she goes, oh, North Bank's so hard. I go, what are you talking about? Well, there's that rock garden. I go, that's 20 feet. Yeah, that's 20 feet. Walk your bike 20 feet and enjoy the other 9/10 of a mile. And I've finally convinced her that, okay, yeah. But so always walk if you can't do something. Don't alternate. Don't smack down that line, because I think a lot of us enjoy going through that rock garden and seeing how fast we can do it, right? On North Bank, the one rock garden, yeah,
sure.
Below the little jump thing.
Well, let's talk about Crank and Drank. So for those of you who don't know, Crank and Drank is a weekly ride. It happens on Tuesday nights, 6 o'clock, behind ATX Bikes. Talk to me about, where did it come from? Whose idea was it? How did that come to be?
There's a lot of fuzzy history. We used to do.
Why is it fuzzy?
Well, because I'm old. Shut up. And it was a long time ago. Yeah, so we used to do some stuff out of Dick Nichols. We'd start out Dick Nichols, and then we'd have a beer afterwards, and then maybe that stopped for a little bit, and then hey, how about behind this bike store? And because they'd moved to the new,
Yeah,
ATX Bikes moved from across from Dale's old workplace to where they are now. And so we started going. But the reason I promoted it was because the SATN was a underutilized resource. I thought, there wasn't, and still is, when You think about going to Walnut on a Saturday afternoon. Are you going to run into anybody? I mean, not literally run into, but could you run into somebody? Yeah, pretty easy because there's a lot of use there. Well, you spread out our users over 140 miles and you never see anybody. I go, this was a beautiful Saturday morning and I just rode 30 miles. And
to be fair, this was also pre-pandemic, right? So things
long
definitely
time
changed.
Ago. Oh yeah, this was a long time ago.
How long ago was it?
Well, the name, going back to that same Bike Mojo, 12 years ago, we started talking about it, and I started a thread, and I go, we're going to do a Ride and Imbibe South. And somebody says, oh, you can't use that. That's a trademark name. You can't say Ride and Imbibe. So I thought, oh, what else can we call it? So Crank and Drink. So that was, maybe 12 years ago, probably. That had an official name, and we'd been doing it for a while before that. And the reason the reason behind Crank It, the reason that I promoted it for so heavily for a while was to educate people to the SATN. And we'd have people show up and go, God, I live next to Dick Nichols. I mean, literally, I live, not me, but someone would say, I live next to Dick Nichols, and I never knew this stuff was back here, like you going underneath Mopac, that aha moment, people just don't know, and it's right there, and it's a unique system, I think. Where else is there 140 miles of urban trail that really, when you're on it, you think you're in a state park, or you've driven 50 miles to pay $10 to get in to ride this kind of trail? I don't know.
So how did it work back in the day? I mean, I'm relatively new to the Crank and Drink. Mm-hmm. I started probably 2021, I think, right when kind of the lockdown restrictions started to lift back up. But I mean, did you all even have a ride plan? Did you just show up and say, let's head east or head south? Or
we had a ride plan.
Like the original?
We'd have a ride.
I can
again fuzzy history.
I can fill in my first Crank and Drink experience for you.
All right.
There was no ride plan. Well, maybe there was, but it existed in Carl's head. And there was a vinyl banner that was about 4 or 5 feet long that you had. It had the map of SATN, and Carl would stand there with his pointer, and he would point on the map where we were going to be going.
That was from a SATN Social. That map was made for a SATN Social. So that was good. Yeah. So and then it got bigger. And then we would maybe have some trail conflict, and maybe then it got more organized.
Yeah.
Maybe it got more organized. And how did I convince you to start doing it? And you do
that's
such
a
really better job than I do, and it's so much fun to read your.
I think what I started emailing you, and
this is wrong, Carl.
Well, no, I said, Carl, I got some great ideas for a route for next week if you don't have anything set up, and I used to put them together on Strava, and I'd send you the link on Strava, and you're like, oh, this looks really good, and after a few of those, I think you said just go ahead and post it, send it out, and I started sending it out. And, the biggest issue I had at that point, and you probably had it when you were doing the original, pre-ride discussions for Crank and Drink, was, you get up there and you'd start rattling off every single segment name that we were going to go through. And I used to do this off the top of my head, just, what that route would look like. And after 10 minutes of just talking, I'd be like, all right, we're ready to ride. And I'm looking out over a sea of 30 blank faces. Like, what the heck did he just talk about? And then, it was always challenging for me to give that talk. And after realizing, no one learned anything from it other than me flexing my knowledge of the trail names, I think it became what it is today, where we post a ride summary. The ride leaders that have volunteered use that summary as kind of a guide while they're looking at the map, but there's no pre-ride discussion of what we're doing. It's just saying, hey, these are the groups, get behind your ride leader. The ride leader knows what we're doing, and we're going out there. And I think that's it's an easier way of
Definitely. And
organizing.
And P.S. It's a drop ride. Good luck.
Yeah. It's a no drop ride if you can keep up. That's our joke. And it's great to get it out like on Thursday that you started. That was a good thing so that everyone can pre-ride it, or at least the ride leaders and everything. It's interesting too that I appreciated Greg, because there's only so many people, and Kat is the same way. She thinks trails, and some people can say, okay, when we're saying those 15 trails in a row, they're mentally going, okay, yeah, you turn at the tree, and you go under the bridge, and as you're following along. Not everybody does that, and some people say, I don't even know the trails now, and they've been, I could name some names, but I'm not going to. But
You're talking about me?
No.
No, there's definitely, there's so many trails back there. And
Yeah.
I lead rides at Walnut, and that took me like 150 rides probably till I could actually know all the trails. I still don't know all the names, but I know where they are and where to go. And SATN has just like 10 times more trails. So yeah, I don't have that. I don't have the map in my head like some people do.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask how, because I don't use navigation, and
me neither. I just know it.
How do you remember that? And like you were talking about, where if you're just going through the names, you're kind of visualizing the whole route. And I know downhill riders, that's how they visualize their downhill course. They're basically, at the top of the slope, and they're visualizing every turn throughout the entire course. And that's the same approach I take to the Crank and Drake group rides. Is I visualize the map that was prepared and kind of walk myself through it. And while I'm leading a group, I'm still thinking about it. I'm like, all right, I'm on this segment. What's the next turn? What's the next turn? And I'm not daydreaming. I'm constantly thinking about what's the next feature that's coming up. What's the next turn, and keep everything together. And
so, Brooke, when you go home, I tell people to learn these trails. Just do the Crank and Drank, and then when you go home, look at your Strava route and kind of follow along and go, oh, that's Disco. Oh, yeah, I remember that tree that we turned on to, turned around onto Forbidden Fence Line or whatever, and just kind of, I encourage people to, that's how you learn the thing, is that you go home and you just kind of replay it and say, oh, yeah, okay, that's what we were on. Oh, so.
That and allowing yourself time to get lost too. Like I'm a big advocate for trail signage. You've helped to put signs up. I put signs up.
You both put signs up.
Like I think we need a lot more signage. There's a lot of people who are against that. And they're like, oh, I don't need a sign to know where I'm going, and appreciate the beauty of getting lost and everything. And I'm of the mentality that the signs don't prevent you that. Like, if there are signs there, that doesn't stop you from, you can ignore them basically, but people need them. But regardless, let me get off of signs here. The point is, I think the way I learned SATN was by just letting myself get lost essentially. And just giving myself the time to say, I don't know where the ride's going to go. I'm going to give myself like 3 hours and enough water here. I'm just going to start riding. Yeah. And once I don't know where I am, I'll look at the map then. If I'm like, now I need to go home. Where am I?
Find your way back.
And then try to find my way back. And I think if you just kind of not focus on navigation and just go out there and explore it, you're a lot more likely to learn the network, because you're going to be relying on context clues and you're going to be looking at more things. And so I think that's a good way to get used to SATN, and also just remembering that like Slaughter Creek kind of cuts through like most of it, and using the creek as like a natural guide. Which side of the creek am I on? Have I crossed it or have I not crossed it? And how far am I in like relation to Mopac or something like that? So
well, the same thing with like driving navigation. If you put on GPS to get where you're going and you get there, you have no idea where you are.
Yeah, right. Yep.
That's an excellent point.
So you guys want to talk about ride etiquette and social etiquette regarding riders, hikers, dogs, etc.?
That's a touchy subject.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's talk about etiquette, group ride etiquette first, since we're talking about SATN and Crank and Drank. And I have a list that I used to put up about stuff, and some of the important things are, I'll say one of them, being the last group, and I'm trying to remind y'all to tell the group this, that the sweep of each group needs to tell people that are coming opposite us, there's more coming. There's more coming, because I can't tell you how many times I've encountered almost, a guy, and did they tell you that I was back here, that we were still coming? And they go, no. And one time, of course, the guy was lying, because the sweep right in front of me said, I told him, and so can't always trust what the guys, but that's a real easy thing to say, is more coming, more coming. Don't, keep your head up, because they're coming. So that's an important one. And then if you drop off a ride, tell your group that you're dropping, so we don't wait for you at the next thing. Now, some of those groups don't wait for anybody anyway,
I do know.
I know. But so that, and then the Marco Polo thing. Marco.
It's interesting. There's the dynamics within the group itself. There's the group by group dynamics and how those groups interact with each other, and then how the overall ride interacts with other trail users. And I think there's 3 layers that a lot of people don't realize. Everyone's trying to balance and harmonize. And
how much do the ride leaders get paid?
Nothing.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
so are they just out there to have fun too?
Every once in a while, I get a thank you.
Oh, every now and then.
So they shouldn't. They wouldn't be too concerned with unsolicited feedback then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But leading a group, I try to set a pace. I'm not trying to go out there and do PRs, and some people, they want to push it on a certain segment, and they'll ride up, right on me. And I mean, that's fine. If you want to ride up on me and pass me, just to say, I want to hit this segment, go ahead, pass. But, my job is to as I see it, is to maintain a solid pace for the duration of the entire route, as opposed to, one particular segment. So if some people want to get after it, like, one of my pet peeves is when someone's right on my heels, and it concerns me, because I know if
safety issue.
Well, it puts a lot of pressure on me to make sure every line choice I make is clean, because if I don't have a clean line choice, I'm going to have someone who's going to crash into me, and it stresses me out. It causes me to ride really fast, but I don't want to get done with 18 miles and collapse. And I feel like there's a dynamic where riders got to realize that there's a spacing, concern that they need to address while in a group ride. Well, don't fall too far back, but, also don't ride on the tire of the person in front of you. And if you start losing the group, don't be competitive. Allow the people from behind you to pass you, to keep that group together. And ultimately, if you start slipping down the group, that's what the sweep is for. And the sweep will either help you get back with the group, or advise you that, hey, just drop off and get picked up by the next group. But, a lot of these people, it's either that they don't think about it, or being very competitive, and it's almost an attack on them if they allow someone to pass them. And
you mean on their ego?
Yeah, I don't know. It's, I think it's just, it makes for a better ride experience if everyone leaves their egos, behind, and just realizes there's a group dynamic we're trying to maintain. And if people appreciate that, it makes it for the overall ride experience is much better for the entire group. And if one group is doing well, it kind of trickles down to other groups, I think. Unfortunately, Carl, I think you in social group, you're left picking up some of the fragments of, people that trickle out of group 1, 2, and 3, and, you're picking them up. And I'm kind of curious, this is a drop ride. So the ride leaders have an obligation to kind of, maintain the group, but it's not their job, or it's not the idea of the ride to keep everyone together. Do you feel pressure when you're riding social to not allow anyone to drop out of that because there's no group behind you? I mean,
no, because that's another huge benefit to the SATN. You feel like you're out in the wilderness, but you're 300 feet from the 7-Eleven. You can always find a street and say, oh, this is where I am, and find your way home. So that's not I just, for the social, I want those, because they're usually new people, and I want them to have a good experience, and not everyone does that comes out because we've had the complaint before. I thought this was the slow group, and I go, well, it's the slowest group, but it's not necessarily the slow group, and so people, it's not for beginners. It's definitely not for beginners because
I don't think any group ride really, unless it says like specifically this is a training ride or something like that. I don't think anybody should think that a group ride is for beginners.
Yeah,
I think you should have like some minimal competency before you go and ride with other people.
That's what I said. I encourage people to download Strava so that they can say, if you can maintain 8 miles per hour on a 10-mile ride out here on these trails, on the trails, then you can hang with the last group.
Well, that would just get you to hang, though.
Well, sometimes, yeah. Well, yeah, that's true.
I think overall speed of all the groups is just over the past year and a half has just increased. And you can look at Strava and just see that increase. And
it's just
I like
fun
to attribute
watching the progress.
Yeah, I think it's everyone's becoming a better rider.
Mm-hmm.
But
I've seen it.
Dale, I'm curious. You used to help out with some of the group leads, you know, 2 and 3, and I know that wasn't your cup of tea. Was it just you just didn't want to lead, or was there something about the group dynamic that was irking you?
It's hard. It's work.
It's not really my cup of tea. I mean, sometimes I can get into that leadership mode, and I did do like in high school, I did ROTC and like this leadership camp and all that sort of thing. So I do kind of consider myself a leader in some sense, but I don't want to volunteer my time and then hear a bunch of flack from people about the pace, this, that, and the other. And I empathize with what you were talking about when someone's right on your tail. You feel like you need to ride perfect or you're going to, screw the person up behind you. And when you're leading a ride, it's not just the person behind you. It's like the entire group behind you. And so I don't know. I kind of got into this spot where I felt like I could never do anything right. And there was this one ride in particular where I was both at the same time, too fast and too slow. And I was like, wow, freaking quantum ride leading pace, right? And so take your pick. And I just kind of moved on from it. But I mean, there's no offense to anybody like that we ride with. I love everybody there. But I think when you're in that mentality and you're giving it and you're just physically exerting, sometimes you don't think about the comments that you make and the way they'll be interpreted by others. And sometimes when you're giving it, you don't interpret comments that people make in like the best way you could, like, that's obviously offensive to me right now while I'm giving it, but later on you tell me that and I might not even care. And so, yeah, there's just, I think ride leaders need some respect. And so that's always something worth keeping in mind. But I also just kind of enjoy riding behind Greg Stevens sometimes, just being able to zone out and keep a pace and, well, try to keep a pace at least.
Yeah. Yeah, following is fun.
I think Group 3, or for anyone that hasn't done the crank and drink, there's a race pace group with that's just blistering fast, and then Group 1, 2
with athletes,
Group 1, 2, 3, and then social, and Group 3 in particular because it was kind of in the middle of the pack. I think is a very it's an interesting group because you got a lot of people that should be riding social but aren't because they're trying to push themselves. Yep. And then you get a lot of people that should probably be in Group 2 and aren't because they want to go for a more relaxed ride. But for me in particular, if I'm out riding and I'm relaxed, I actually end up riding faster because I'm not thinking about the ride itself. I'm just enjoying what I'm doing. So you get this weird, tug of war in Group 3 where there's a lot of people that should be riding, in a faster group, and there's some people that should be riding in a slower group. And Dale, you've experienced it, and I think other people that have volunteered to lead, Group 3 for Crank and Drank are experiencing it as well. And tomorrow we've actually split Group 3, and it's going to be Group 3 and Group 4. And I'm going to try to emphasize that, people in Group 3, this is going to be like a Group 2 pace with, a few breaks. And then, Group 4 is going to be more towards social and see if we can break that up and kind of eliminate some of that conflict and make it an overall better ride experience for everyone that's in those groups.
Can I give a shout out real quick? So to your point, I had never actually thought about that it does kind of become a catch-all group. And so that's probably where some of the difficulty comes to. So shout out to Tate and Ryan for being the 2 Group 3 ride leaders consistently. They do a great job. Yeah. And those are the biggest groups too, I think.
Yeah, a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or a lot of times, I go, is there going to be anybody left when I see one drive off? There's a whole bunch that try that. But the beauty of Crank and Drank is the way it's designed, that you can try and push yourself. But again, that goes to ride etiquette. If you say, I'm losing the guy in front of me, that's wrong. If you can't see the guy in front of you, you need to let this guy go by and then the next guy go by. And then if you end up in the next group behind you, that's okay, because here they come, and we're all going to do the same thing. We're all going to get back to be drinking beer behind the shop, so the way it's designed, there shouldn't be pressure on really anybody, except the Group 1 ride leader.
Well, I think so. Group 1 in particular is anyone who goes off with a race pace knows what they're getting.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's just a free for all. I don't have to worry about that.
Right.
But with Group 1, last week, we rolled out, and my sweet spot for a group is about 8 to 10 riders.
That's the best that's
preferably
what we try and do.
Preferably about 8. Because if you get more than that, you get these weird, slinky effects while you're going through features, and if people don't properly space, people are going to have to stop, and it throws the rhythm off. But we rolled out of the parking lot. It looked like there was 20 people in Group 1.
That's what I'm saying.
And, when I notice that, I will purposely not stop and just push it for the first quarter of the ride, because I know that some of those people in that group shouldn't be in Group 1, but they're trying to push themselves, and I'm trying to get them to drop. And I don't say that in a mean way. I know for them to enjoy their ride, they'd be better off with Group 2. So I push really hard in the beginning to try to fragment.
I like that. That's a good.
Because I know if I'm pushing and they can't hold, they'll drop in the group behind us, and that's what the beauty of this ride is. You get picked up by the other groups.
Yeah.
Yep. Greg does the same thing in like the first 10 minutes of the ride. I'm like, oh, please, dear God, just let me hang on for these 10 minutes, because I know he'll like calm down.
So I get through the shakeout.
That first few miles, it's just like, oh God. Now I know why some of y'all do like the warm up ride before the ride, because just starting off full throttle is hard.
Warm up ride.
Yeah.
Who does that? Is that on there?
No.
This is what caused his trauma.
Who's in charge of the big ass ride?
Zach Sisson, who did a whole lot of finding of trail out on East. It was his vision, the Boggy Down and Boggy Ditty. That was his vision. And I think that trail builders, once they finish a trail, they are proud of it, and they want to educate to the public for 2 reasons: because they're proud of it, but also to get enough wheels on it to keep it beat in,
Sure.
And so this is an educational thing and just a community building thing, like we do a whole bunch on the SATN community. We do
The SATN social too.
SATN social, that sort of thing. And so, so he's and he had talked to the Fast Friends people, the brewery there. So I rode that today. It's in pretty good shape. It's that's going to be 420. April 20th at Fast Friends at 8:00. And we're going to do the Big East Loop is what we call. It's about a 26.7. It's on your thing.
I don't know. I think, definitely. I think it was about 25 miles.
Yeah, a little bit more. But so it's going to be fun. Yeah.
It's a pretty long ride.
Yeah, big ass ride.
I think it's a unique, especially for me. I'm not really familiar with those East trails out by 35.
Oh, well, then see, that's the purpose of this.
I live in Southwest Austin, so the trails I know are the ones I can get out and explore easily. But to get out to 35, because I prefer not to drive. If I can ride there, I'll ride there.
You can ride there.
I mean, I'm already 12, 13 miles deep if I ride out east, and there's not much room for exploring once I do that, because I know I've got another 12, 13 miles to get back to the house. So the big ass ride, just for me, it's an opportunity to just follow people
Commit to it
and,
too.
and learn those trails and see those trails. Because every time I go out there, I love them. I think they're challenging. They're unique environments. The east side is nothing like the west side. But I don't know those routes, and just to get out there and have someone that show me those trails and give me the opportunity to experience, I think it's a unique event, and hopefully a lot of people come out for it.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. That when I do that Big East loop, I feel like, not that it takes a long time, but I feel like I've been gone like 2 days, or I've gone to a different country or something. It's just somehow it's a different environment, and and you go through a whole bunch of different ecosystems or some, I don't know why it is, but it's challenging, but it's not challenging like rocky and features and that kind of stuff. It's just very unique. And so it's an opportunity to come out and I think Fast Friends is doing something. Maybe, I'm not sure.
I don't know. Zach said it's sponsored by Fast Friends.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're doing anything.
That's the brewery?
Yeah, brand new brewery there on the side of I-35, just south of William Cannon.
I think a shout out to them, but also I would like to see some of the businesses in the SATN area take advantage of the proximity they have to the trail network and open their doors to make it more inviting for bikers. I know Nomadic Outpost up there off of Brody. I would love to see some bike racks that can accommodate mountain bike tires. I love Nomadic. It's a great spot. It's a great proximity, and they added some bike racks. And Carl, I think you talked to them.
I did.
But the funny thing is they're not wide enough for a mountain bike tire. So.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't even. Well,
gravel bikes only.
My bike's leaning against the picnic table. I'm not putting it way over there in the.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say the same thing. Like my bike, if it's not at home in my house, it never leaves my sight.
Your grasp.
It's unfortunate side effect of living in the city. Any city, really.
Greg, you brought up an interesting point. Brooks, do we have some time?
Yeah, go for it.
Violet Crown Trail. So I was just thinking about this the other day when I was riding out there and exploring it. So the Violet Crown Trail currently ends where Walgreens is there at Slaughter, and it's planned to go all the way out to Buda. And so they took what I named was my favorite trail, which was Chip Chop. They took our Chip Chop away to build the VCT. And initially, I think a lot of us were disappointed about that. We're losing single track to...
Don't you admit that you've ridden it already?
12 foot. Never. No. I just kind of looked at it from a God's eye view upon my bicycle. But yeah, so I don't know how I got onto it. It must have not been clearly marked or something. But yeah, I took a turn, and here I am on this 12-foot wide gravel trail. But we originally lamented that, but I was out there the other day, and I was, trying to exert myself a bit on Genesis and a couple of the other rocky trails, and I realized I still had to ride home. And then I realized that the Violet Crown Trail will be there, and that's going to be something that cuts through like the majority of SATN, and it's going to give us an opportunity to completely change the way we approach SATN and our routing and riding. In that we can give it far away from home and try to improve, get our PR on a difficult segment, and then just ride some basic, easy trail back to ATX bikes.
I've done a lot of PR. I'm on the Violet Crown Trail Advisory Board, and I've done a lot of PR in our community. Say, don't give them a hard time. This is going to be a good thing for us because, and you didn't mention that you can ride it when it's wet. So when it's rain, you will be able to gravel bike all over all the Violet Crown Trail and stuff. And it's going to open up so much when we get through to Buda, when there's on the 45, the new 45 that has the nice paved hike and bike trail along it. There's 2 cutouts. One of them's an educational one, but the other one is the actual trailhead to the Violet Crown Trail when it goes south to Buda. So when you do those 2 little things off of the trail, one of those is going to be the Violet Crown Trail. And when that opens, when that fence gets cut, booyah!
You mentioned wet weather, and so trails when they're wet and everything, and that will allow us probably to do a crank and drink after a rain in some situations where it can be trail, because sometimes, 80% of our route is good to go and basically what we would call hero dirt. And then 20% of it is garbage and we can't ride it. And so if the VCT allows us to bypass that 20% and link up the 80, then we have 100% trail route.
It'll be an out and back, but still it'll be as much as we want to. That's a great point.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what you said in the very beginning, Carl, about, wanting to ride on the road more. And I think it's okay to give away sections. Personally, I'm okay with giving away sections of the mountain bike trails to improve like actual urban transit where people can actually go places and accomplish things and not just recreation. I'm totally on board with that personally.
I've ridden the new Violet Crown Trail to Home Depot to buy a screw, just because, hey, I can ride there faster than
exactly.
Well, it's safety corridors too.
Yeah,
I mean, trying to connect to the Greenbelt from the South Austin Trail Network. If you want to go do a Greenbelt ride, I mean, it's a heck of an effort just to do that ride, let alone have to take trails all the way up there.
Yeah.
And now, like to what Dale's point, you can just hop on the Violet Crown, get a nice, easy, to and from the Greenbelt, and have better access to those mountain bike trails. But from a safety standpoint, just not having to ride Brody there.
Yeah.
So crank and drink, Barton Creek Greenbelt win. Just kidding. Please don't.
I've got a route.
Just kidding.
Yes.
Please don't.
Well, to that point, it's difficult for some of the riders who want to get out there and just do 15 miles because you're already it's like from ATX it's already 6 or 7 to get up there.
Oh, yeah, and that's like Mary Moore, same idea. It's 7 miles from the parking lot to get to Mary Moore parking lot, and so Mary Moore doesn't work for crank and drinks, unfortunately, because that's a underutilized area for sure there.
Well, I think that's what's cool about SATN though is if you wanted to, you can make it a day.
Oh,
plan ahead,
easy.
have backpacks. I've seen some guys they go out and drop food ahead at certain waypoints.
Well, what did Zach do recently in Austin too? They had over 100-mile rides, like 114 in one day, I think.
Yeah.
Insane.
Well, and Steven's going to do his perimeter thing. That's a 50-mile of the SATN perimeter is 50 miles or so.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally just the perimeter.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't even get into the meat of SATN.
And there's a lot inside.
Yeah, and I think it's not even taking advantage of all the perimeter.
No,
I think there's more to it. Yeah. So it's kind of exciting to see how that's going to evolve. I think right now the push is that those east side trails, I think that's where the new, the new ground, for SATN where it's going to expand. And then, when Violet Crown gets to Buda and starts heading south there, I think it's going to open more opportunity. But, I joke with, not even joke, but I talk with my road bike buddies. I'm like, y'all got to be on a mountain bike. I mean, road biking is too dangerous. And I joke about it with my wife, and it's just, if you're road biking, your chance of death is much higher.
Yeah,
I mean, because if all you
might
need
break
is
a collarbone mountain biking, but you're not going to die.
Yeah, sure. Your chances of crashing mountain biking are much higher, but the chance of catastrophic injury, I think is much lower, and it makes it. I think people need to realize that, especially in this day of age, with so many distracted drivers out there, and cars being bigger and being faster. It's dangerous.
And people are being dumber.
Yeah.
I drive to crank and drink, even though I live less than a mile away, because I was hitting on my way home, coming out like the dude coming out of the HEB parking lot. Wasn't even paying attention, ran right into me.
Was that after mountain biking?
Yeah, that was after a crank and drink ride. So I was coming home from crank and drink, and I was just passing the HEB parking lot, and he just.
It was 1:30 in the morning.
No, it wasn't. And it was just kind of wild because it wasn't that late, but it wasn't very busy. I had my lights on, everything had 2 lights on. I had my helmet light, and the dude still managed to run into me. And luckily he stopped. He was very apologetic, and he paid for a new front wheel because he bent my front wheel and everything. But it's like,
I was about to ask, how's the bike?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was
the bike
fine.
okay?
I was fine, but I definitely gave him what for in the beginning because I was like, dude, you screwed up my bike and all that. And he was like, I'm so sorry, but. That's the reason why I drive to crank and drink, even though it's way more convenient for me to just ride my bike. It's because I could get killed in the less than mile ride to crank and drink.
I drive so I can bring my ice chest.
Well, that's a good point too. Yes.
Yeah,
Greg,
I think
we need Greg's backpack ice chest.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, that's. I'm thinking about bringing it tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there was a guy who tragically passed away at Brushy Creek recently, but that's
know.
the only death I've ever heard of when mountain biking, and as opposed to road bikes where it's unfortunately a very common thing that happens on a regular basis. So
I can't tell you how many times like I've crashed, had gnarly just OTBs flying straight into. I've had concussions, but I'm still here and still riding.
right.
You know, so
I've broken collarbone too.
Yeah.
And gotten stitches in my hand.
Yeah.
I always laugh when mountain bikers start to talk. It's like the boat scene in Jaws where they go, "Oh, that's nothing. I have that." You know, everybody starts showing their scars.
Or non-flashbacks. That's roadies. For roadies, it's non-flashbacks. For us, it's the showing the scars.
You gotta have good health insurance for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the fun with the social after we do those group rides is everyone's, it's an opportunity for people who have something in common to discuss that.
Yep.
And their war stories from that ride and what they've done before. And, everyone's got their jobs. I mean, there's so many riders that I know in Crank and Drink that I don't know what they do for a living because we don't talk about work. We don't talk about the stuff that's, that's the grind day to day.
We talk about the important stuff.
Yeah, mountain biking, and how you doing? How was that ride? What are your plans this weekend to go? Ride some more and
where you've ridden, where you've been.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Trails.
Yeah. And my wife, are they married? I'm like, well, I don't know. I never asked. Do they have kids? I don't know. It's a good question. I never asked. And then there's people that I've met and talked to for years at Crank and Drink, and it's
so funny. My wife can't understand it at all. That because when they talk, they know by the end of the day that the new person they just met, they know where they were married, how many kids they have, and all that kind of stuff, and we don't care.
and it's weird to occasionally bump into those people outside the ride setting and see them in civilian clothes, so to speak, and and have that weird look like I think you look familiar, but when people are not in their bike helmet and their jerseys and stuff, and there's so many people that I identify based on their bike, and I see the bike, I'm like, oh, that's who that is. And then, I'll be at Torchy's and there'll be, Vincent, when I first met Vincent, he was there with his kids at Torchy's, and I'd never seen him outside of the mountain bike setting. And him and I on the opposite side of the patio, and we keep kind of, exchanging these looks like, I think I know you. And then the next Tuesday, he was there, and he, were you at Torchy's the other day? I was like, I was. Was that you? I was like, oh, okay. It's like, I didn't recognize you without the bike helmet.
Yeah, you can recognize him from like half a mile away when you're on the bike. So see him like across the soccer field, you're like,
no, totally. And
I think it's one of the things that's fairly unique about Crank and Drank because most of the social rides that I've been on, social, I put in quotes, and it gets to the end of the ride and it's like, okay, that was fun. Thanks. See you later.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, bye.
I went to Walnut. You're exactly right. I went to Walnut for the ARR just because they say, well, what's this all about? And what? Where'd everybody go? It was.
We have a race to see who will be in the final four every night. It's a race of attrition, and if you lose, you win. So,
no, that's fun. The amount of people that stick around for that, I think it's it's been growing, and the fight for the final four is like Dale said is a badge of honor, and I expect that to be a harder fight once the weather gets warmer.
No kidding.
You're not freezing, and
I laugh because sometimes the ride to my house Strava rides, and they start at 1 a.m. and I go, wait a minute, the Crank and Drank's on Tuesday, not on Wednesday morning. I've seen that 2 or 3 or 4 times. So Tuesdays.
Yeah,
Tuesday.
I'd get words coming to the door if it was 1 a.m. Yeah.
Well, I got one thing left on my my little list here of topics, and that's Greg's incident. Do you want to talk about that, Greg? As I've heard, secondhand accounts, but one of the things I like to do on this podcast is to get firsthand accounts of everything. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll talk about it. I'm happy to do so. And it goes to Carl's point earlier about, is it worth it to, pre-ride before the group rides? And
that's what I was alluding to. When I was like, who pre-rides? Who would do that?
and for anyone that doesn't know, it was the December 5th incident where the gentleman went on a shooting spree through Austin, Unfortunately, a large number of lives were lost. And I
you
had
went all the way from Round Rock to San Antonio, right?
started in San Antonio all the way up to Round Rock. I've kind of disassociated myself with the facts of it, just from a trauma standpoint. I've already, dealt with enough. There's a lot of people that have suffered as a result of this. And I don't want to diminish their pain. And, I'm hoping for swift justice in this particular matter. But, from a ride standpoint and the topic that we were talking about, it was one of the very first times that I'd gotten the crank and drink early, because I brought the grill, and it was a brand new grill. So I didn't ride my bike. I drove the car. And because I drove the car, I was off on my ETA of how much time I needed to get there before the ride. I was like, well, I got 15 minutes. I can do a quick loop through South Bank, and I just went out by myself within the first quarter mile. As I entered the trail, as a warm up, I was pushing myself, what happened first was I thought someone threw a firecracker in front of me. I had visual memories of seeing sparks coming up in front of my bike. I'm not sure what it was. But I think he shot. He was lying ambush style in the woods off to the side of the trail. And I don't know why he targeted me. I think maybe he just wanted the bike for mobility reasons. I have no idea. But the first shot missed, and as I'm going by the trail, I remember seeing out of the corner of my eye someone rise up from the ground. And they started chasing after me with a weapon. I'm not a gun guy. I really don't know much about them. And it was dusk, so I really didn't get too good of a look. But I just remember seeing a weapon in the air, and the first thing that popped into my head, and it blows everyone's mind when I talk about this, is an alligator. Because the trail that I was on, it's about 100 miles of just wide open, straight single track, and even though this all happened within a matter of seconds, I processed what felt like an entire book of thoughts in my head. And the first thing I thought was, if I ride this trail straight, he's going to shoot me. And I thought of an alligator, and I don't know if this is true or not, but they always say if an alligator is going to chase you, you run in a zigzag, because an alligator can't turn. It runs in a straight line. Mm-hmm. And that's what I started doing. I started riding as erratically as I could on the trail, and off to the right, off to the left, off to the right, off to the left. And I was just, riding back and forth I just remember hearing gunshots going off. And I didn't even process it. I thought it, like I said, I thought it was maybe a flare or firework. And I just remember just a flight instinct and just having to get away as quickly as possible. And I got hit once in the left elbow. And it felt like everyone's like, what would it feel like? And it just felt like I hit my elbow really hard on a table. Like,
it felt like you got hit with a rubber bullet, because you said somebody was shooting rubber bullets at me. When you came back, and I know you don't remember everything that happened when you came back, but you said somebody's shooting rubber bullets at me. And we look at you and we go, Greg, you got shot. You got a hole in your elbow. And
I didn't even know that, and I think it was Robert, I think, who first pointed it out, and he took some photos of it, and it hadn't processed to me that someone
why would they?
A trail network that I was so familiar with, that I felt so comfortable on, even at night, and it just there wasn't a safety issue. So the first thing that popped in my head was, it can't be someone who was trying to kill me. I thought maybe it was a homeless individual, maybe trying to defend their territory or something like that. So that's why I thought of like a rubber bullet.
Yeah.
I was like, he couldn't possibly have been trying to kill me.
Right.
Then I rode all the way back to the shop with a bullet hole in my elbow, and called 911, and someone was firing rubber bullets at me, and then you all said, like, you've been shot. And that's when I looked down and saw the bullet hole, and I just in shock.
I ran into the store to get a bandage for you, if you recall that. I was the one that put the bandage on. I did.
Oh, I remember you took it personally, like someone was threatening the trail. I remember you grabbed the machete, and you were about to run into that trail. And
Oh my God.
I wasn't thinking about you, Carl. I'm sorry. I should probably have held you back. Hopefully someone else held you back.
They did.
But yeah, it was just and there was probably 60 people there.
Oh, yeah.
Right, for a group
Yeah,
ride, and
yeah.
they all witnessed it. Me coming back, and it was kind of an attack on, like I said, something I found safe and welcoming, and someone had tried to violate that.
Yeah.
And it was personal at that point. It made me incredibly angry that someone would not only attack me, but for everyone else in that rides those trails to now have them think about that. And like, am I safe out on these trails? And
that was the first thing that went through my head.
Yeah. And that's what made me angry. It was just, no, these trails are safe. And I tell everyone the trails are as safe as they've always been. This was, a random incident, had nothing to do with, the people that are on the trails.
He didn't know
users
you,
of the trails.
that's for sure. It wasn't personal for him.
Yeah. And what was not only my own recovery and processing mentally what had happened, but it was important that I get back out there as quickly as possible. And that's why the next Tuesday at Crank and Drank, I didn't ride, but I wanted to be there.
Well,
so
you were...
Well, yeah, because a bullet hole in my arm. But I wanted to be there for the social activities afterwards, because I wanted everyone to see me and see that I was still enthusiastic about the group, the riding, that I was fine, that I didn't feel unsafe, and I wanted them to see that so they felt the same thing.
That was huge. It was a healing thing, because everybody was traumatized. There's so many what ifs that were. I mean, I still get creeps, right? I mean, it's just creepy. I just feel unease talking about it. But that was so heroic, to
it
come
could
and
happen anywhere.
Yeah,
I mean,
it could happen anywhere.
It was important that people saw me, that I felt seen, and that I got back out there as quickly as I could.
Are you comfortable with kind of like rehashing what you told me about? Well, you're talking to somebody about this, and they said that as mountain bikers, we process things differently. And I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. So I ended up seeing a trauma counselor.
That's good.
I felt good, but I wanted to talk to someone about it and have them let me know that how I was processing it was appropriate, and I was doing it in a healthy way. And my wife was having a really hard time with it. And I don't blame her. She still does every once in a while. But for me, I just breezed past it. It was a traumatic incident, and I immediately put it behind me and tried to focus on just moving forward. And I remember the counselor had told me that, I don't have any studies personally about this, but he said that people that are active in outdoor activities,
extreme sports,
action sports.
Yeah, action sports have this your body is used to processing the now and being focused in the present and what you are doing, and not thinking about what could happen or what will happen
or what has happened.
Exactly, but it's just what you're doing there in that moment, and that's where your mind is. And if you're on a mountain bike and you have a crash, I'm not thinking about that crash for the rest of the ride. You got to push that behind you, because it's going to make the rest of your ride unsafe if you're constantly second guessing yourself. And, extreme athletes, they don't second guess themselves. If there's a crash, they just put it behind them, they process it, and they move on to whatever they're doing now. And you see those, one of the documentaries I love, was it Free Solo? Is that what it is?
Yeah, with Alex Honnold.
Yeah, where they're climbing,
you need a bag of chalk just to watch that film.
Yeah, I mean, but they're their heart rate in that moment is as if they're sitting at a desk.
Yeah.
They're not focused on their route up to that point or where they're going to go. They're focused in the now on what they're doing, that next handhold. And that's it. And they're perfectly calm in that moment. And, the counselor said, he thinks that I was processing it very well, because I spend so much time doing these social rides out on the SATN trail and being, focused in that activity. And in my body, at least I like to think it just has a way of just processing that trauma and putting it behind you and moving on. And
yeah, that was interesting to me. I've told that story more than once about that the counselor came up with that. That was cool.
I just
made us feel badass.
Yeah, I was just like, everyone who rides on these group rides or the SATN and all you guys, I consider you all a bunch of badasses, and it's and that's part of the love that I have for all this. And it's unfortunate that that incident had to occur and people had to experience it. But everyone I've talked to has processed it and moved on, I think. And you think about it every once in a while, and if I'm coming on South or Dixie, that is, if I'm doing Dixie at night by myself, it's always it's like, oh man, there better not be anyone else on this trail. But I just push through it, and it just, as time goes by, I just feel better and better about it. And one of the things for my wife to help her heal with it was to take her out there and have her do the exact path. She goes, I want you to walk me through the exact path you took from leaving the bike shop to going back to the bike shop. She goes, because you keep talking about it and you keep explaining where you were in the straightaway, this 100 yards that you had to get through. And part of her healing was just to visualize that and see that where I was, where he was, where I had to go, and how I got back. And it still blows my mind every time I ride through that. I'm like, I can't believe I did that.
I can understand that, because when I crash somewhere, every time I go past the crash thing where I hurt my elbow on disco, for instance, I go, that's when I hurt my, and I can only imagine. I go,
well, if you go there today, there's police tape still up in the trees, and
still have your trophy.
Yes, the SATN bullet dodger runner-up trophy. Shout out to Jeff for that. I think he was the one who came up with that.
He did.
Yeah. But no, the tape's up there.
Second place.
And I still think about it every time I go through there. And, on the group rides, people that know what happened, they always ask for me to point it out. And, what direction were you going? And, how do you do it? But, what's still, the only thing that I still can't process was the amount of thought that I processed within that millisecond. I mean, time literally slowed down. And what was probably 1 or 2 seconds, felt
that
like
you had the wherewithal to start.
Yeah, that was the first thing that popped. It was just alligator, and just so, anyways, it's part of the lure of the SATN Trail Network now.
It just grows. The legend grows.
The legend of Greg Klipp.
Yeah. So when you walked with her, with your wife, back to the shop, and it was like 200 yards and did she say, and this is where 50 guys were just sitting drinking beer while this guy was still out there with the gun? Did anybody put that together?
No, yeah, no. I still like to hear the stories, and gosh, I think it was Andrew. Andrew looked at you and goes, "So we still riding?"
Yeah.
And I think that goes to the devotion of these riders. It's like, okay, well, that happened. Are we still going to ride? And I actually love it that some of the guys went out and they did a north loop. They just went in the direction away from where all where everything was going on. And I think it's a testament to the riders and the love of the trails down there that people are like, well, I still want to get out and ride. And, he's down there. He's not going to bother me. Yeah, well,
it shook me up. I just wanted to drink beer and. And the other testament to the group was that nobody that night said, "And how's the bike?" Nobody asked.
So Brooks, you got another minute.
Go
so that was the one thing that I thought of. That was the next morning. I was like, oh man, I didn't check the bike. I was calling 911
in the garage, like, I'm okay, it's okay.
And they're loading me in the ambulance. I remember, as they're loading me in the ambulance, someone passed it off to Frank over at ATX Bikes, and he took the bike in. But that whole night I was like, I never checked the bike. Did the bike get hit? Like, I sure hope the bike is okay. and that was so the next morning I went to ATX Bikes. The first thing, like, out of the hospital, I was at ATX when they opened up, and I saw Frank. He was there, and it was before the news crews had gotten there and stuff. And I asked him, I was like, did you check the bike? And that was the first thing he said. He goes, as soon as I took possession of your bike, yes, I did a full evaluation of the bike. As soon as I brought it inside the shop, he goes, I checked the wheel, I checked the frame.
Frank didn't want to be responsible for accusations of shooting your bike.
Hey, this didn't have a bullet hole when I brought it in.
No, Mike, the bike was not hit. But yeah, that was the first thing I was thinking about next morning.
Oh man, what a.
All right, guys. Well, that's all the topics that I have. Is there anything else you guys want to add? Append?
Yes, if we got another minute real quick, we talked about the group dynamics, and we never talked about other trail users, and I find it important to be as friendly and polite as possible to other users of the trail, and to not just say that these are mountain bike trails, you shouldn't be hiking on it and stuff like that, and I think it's an asset for the community to use these trails, but for non-riders to also, I want those people to appreciate the main use of the trail, and that to not destroy it or interfere it, to the extent that you're taking it away from those riders. And I'm as polite as possible to the hikers. I stop, I let them pass, but there's and Dale, you can chime in if you want, but there's the electronic motorcycles that are out there, and people
don't get
him started. Don't get him
We'll be here all day.
started.
We'll save that. We'll save that for when I'm on here with you, Brooks. But no, to your point, Greg, I think other trail users are assets to our community as well. Trail runners and hikers. I think a lot of people need to understand that hikers don't, like, by default hate riders at all. I've actually been pleasantly surprised building jumps and stuff over by East Bank. I'll have people walk by or hike by, and they'll be like, thanks for the trail work. And I'm clearly building dirt jumps, and they're like, oh, it's so great. Thank you for all the work you're doing. I'm like, okay, thanks, bye. And but then, like, we'll be trimming, and they'll say the same thing. And so, hikers appreciate what we do. There's some that are like jerks, but most of them appreciate it, and trail runners especially. And those are our assets. So if we ever need to, like, lobby for the city to sanction SATN or give us the autonomy to be able to take care of the network, we might need more trail users than just riders on our side.
Yeah.
And so it's important to be friendly with hikers and not just blow past them, and remember that we do yield to them. Give them the opportunity to go by, but 9 out of 10 times I find that hikers will yield to you. But at least make it clear that you're trying to yield to them to begin with. But yeah,
it always gives me great joy to see people using the trail. It doesn't matter. And when you say that when we have to lobby the city for something, I always say that trail hiker can carry a sign that says "Save our trails" at the back of the city council meeting just as well as a mountain biker. So yeah, the more that are advocates for the trails, the better. So that's always good.
Be nice out there.
Yeah, be nice.
Be excellent to each other, as Abraham Lincoln once said.
All right, good. Anybody want to give their contact information, Instagram or Strava or whatever, and then Carl, you want to talk about muchachos? Is that something you want to open publicly?
Well, yeah, we have a email list that we send out the things that Greg comes up with, and people will say, put me on the list, or I get requests to put on the list. And if the best way to do that is to come to some crank and drinks, because we want to say real people out there.
Yeah, it's a fan club. You have to come and actually be there.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just, oh, I'm on the list. Be out there, and I've seen you a couple of times. Oh, great. Well, come on. What's your email? Send me it right now and say, put me on the damn list. So
show up to Crank and Drag and ask Carl to put you on the email list.
That's the technique. That's how it works.
Well, and do a ride before you ask to be put on.
Well, yeah. Don't just show up in your tuxedo and say, "Put me on the list."
Yeah. Do a ride. Make sure you
look good, but
you like it, and then join the list, and contribute to the discussion, I guess, so to speak. But, I know it's kind of just a one-way conversation on muchachos. But, Brooks, you're getting at the, how can people get a hold of us? I think the easiest way to get a hold of us is 6 o'clock behind ATX Bikes off of Slaughter.
Bring beer.
As long as it's not actively raining, we'll be there. At least someone will be there. But I'm not on social media. Strava is my only social media outlet. So,
And the email.
There is a Crank and Drink Instagram handle that James is working on now.
Yeah.
So if you do follow Crank and Drink on Instagram, that's a good way to get the information. I also have the MTB ATX website that I maintain. I try to upload the route and Greg's route notes to that, both in Strava and Trailforks format, typically. And then James will share that on Tuesdays as well, so you can kind of preview the route and get all the details. If it's your first time coming out, where to park, what to bring, how it kind of works, you name it.
MTB ATX. I can't brag enough about that.
That's also where the Big Ass Ride. So Zach reached out and asked to put the route information and everything on there as well. So if you need information on the Big Ass Ride, it is there as well. And that's where we'll put probably the SATN social info too.
Yeah, or any information about anything mountain bike related in Austin. That's a wealth of information on your website there.
Carl, I'm curious, do we have any idea for SATN Social this year? I know the Big Ass Ride is the focus right now on, April 20th. But
yeah, there's a date. October 24th or something like that is the tentative date.
Okay.
If that's a Saturday.
Before Halloween.
Yeah, a week before Halloween. Yeah, exactly. Saturday before, I think it's a 24th.
Well, I think it was just important before the time change, too.
Yeah. Oh,
What is the SATN social?
SATN Social. Yeah. It's a fun thing.
It's a fun thing.
It's another community involvement deal, just to show off the whole network, and it's a fun social deal after it. There's 4 17-mile routes, and you bite off how much you think you can chew. And we have had 4 or 5 or 6 people now, I guess, through the different iterations, be able to do all of it. So it turns into a 67-mile ride, which is less than half of what the SATN is now, but still. And I still okay with not changing the routes, just so there's a legacy of doing the west and the north. And yes, the trail system has changed since the SATN Social has started, but still, I kind of lean that way. What do you think?
We're going to add 17 laps. We're going to add a route that's 17 laps of tunnel vision this year.
The cool down.
Yeah.
And a testament to Carl's routing of SATN Social. It's 67 miles with no overlap whatsoever. So each of those 17 miles is a distinct, unique route that has no conflict with the other 3 out there. So I think that's an impressive testament to the number of trails out there and Carl's ability to design them in such a way that you can do such a long ride, and every minute of that ride is new.
Yeah. Well, I think we could sit here and talk about bikes and events and trails all night. But,
yes, let's do.
Thank you, Dale, Carl, and Greg for being here with me. This has been the Austin Mountain Biking Podcast. I'm your host, Brooks Lawson, a.k.a. the Mountain Biking Realtor, and you can find all things Brooks at brookslawson.com. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Brooks.
Thank you.
Thank you.